I never gave any regard to my stepmother's absence. I didn't view her absence negatively, but she was consistently aloof. She concentrated on her life after getting married. My father and I did not anticipate that we would become. At close range, she exuded an exquisite beauty and poise. She appeared to possess everything. Together, I admired her from afar, respecting her boundaries, providing her. But as time passed, something happened. Strange changes began to occur between us. I found myself paying more attention to her, things I hadn't done before. One day, I arrived home earlier than expected. Usually, Dad was out of town. Over the weekend, the house was unusually quiet. I strolled around the house, but not in a serious manner. I anticipated finding someone until I received a message. There were faint noises coming from the stables outside. Back then, my stepmother had a fondness for horses. Spent hours with her favorite. I wasn't sure what Mayar was doing. Curiosity overcame me, and I cautiously approached the stable. I approached and saw her standing there. She softly ran her fingertips along her touch on the horse's side was gentle and soft. Her attitude toward the horse was that I hadn't seen anything like it before. Not only did she exhibit calmness, but I also discovered a deeper aspect within her. Against the stable wall, watching her, from a distance, fascinated by. She appeared to have a relationship with the horse's hand moved slowly and rhythmically, strokes her fingers to trace patterns. Across the horse's coat, her body sways slightly with each. She was unaware of my presence, yet my gaze remained fixed on her. The hair fell around her face, framing her. Her delicate features and movements. It was mesmerizing. There was something so intimate. Regarding the manner in which she caressed the animal, she lost herself in her own world, unaware of it. Anything else, I felt myself increasing. I am becoming increasingly fascinated by her inability to shake the strange feeling building. I must have created a noise within myself. She immediately looked up into her eyes. We just held on to mine for a moment. We both glanced at each other. Speaking of words, there was a peculiar. There is tension in the air, something unspoken. Between us, I felt my heart beating with uncertainty. She smiled, unsure of what to do next. Softly, something about that smile caused the tension. Easy was unaware that you were at home. Stated that her voice was soft and quiet. Shrugging and trying to play it cool, I just got. She walked back toward me, her hands still in place. Her eyes never left the horse while she rested. Leaving mine. There was something. Today, I noticed something unusual about her behavior. I couldn't quite pinpoint her. As usual, it seemed warmer and more open. The distance between us has vanished. She stood closer, and I could feel the warmth of her body and the fragrance of her perfume, mingling with the earthy odor of. "Do you like horses?" she asked her. The voice was soft, and I assume it was never truly thought. I responded, my voice just above. With a whisper, she moved closer. He reached out, grabbed my hand, and guided me. It to the horse's neck, feeling that they whispered about their strength and quietness. They seemed to comprehend you without saying anything. Her hand lingered on mine. Her touch is light but forceful. The way she gazed at me was truly captivating. Intimate, our hands were pushed together. I could feel the silky coat of the horse against mine. Feel the warmth of her body, the softness. Her hair brushed across my arm, and it was doing things to me that I didn't. Her eyes met mine again, and, for a minute, everything else melted away. She was the only one who stood so close. Her lips parted while her hand remained on mine. She seemed to be on the verge of speaking. I was struggling to find the right words to express it. The tension between us was intense. Tension, but not the unpleasant sort. It was the type that made my skin tingle. My heart raced in a way that made me want something. Lean in closer to her and feel her. We stood there because that's how we felt. Like forever, neither of us moved. We find ourselves enmeshed in this peculiar energy. Minute, and then unexpectedly she takes a step back, her eyes lingering on mine. She hesitated for a brief moment before turning. I felt her absence of warmth immediately, and it left me feeling, "You should come out here more often." She frequently spoke in hushed tones. She returned to the horse, her hands shaking, once more caressing its man. I knew what to say but didn't know how. Consider what transpired between. But I knew there was one thing I desired more than anything else. I longed to feel her touch again. Stand near her and immerse yourself in her. That moment with her, I couldn't shake. I couldn't get her out of my mind. The days that followed were torturous. I noticed her every time we passed. Each other was in the house. There was this unspoken thing between us. We never discussed that moment in the stable. But it was always present, hanging in there. The air between us was like a secret that only we knew. I knew, and as time passed, the more I found myself drawn to her, craving her. Unspoken to her touch and presence. I began spending more time in stables, and I found myself joining her. Initially, we did not say much. I just worked side by side, brushing the horses, feeding them, and cleaning the stalls were empty, but the silence was not unpleasant. I paid an additional fee each time. Every time our hands came into contact, when their eyes met, the tension returned. One evening, the feeling was stronger than before. The sun began to set, providing a warm golden glow. As the light illuminated the stable, she turned to face me. Her eyes were filled with something I couldn't. Quietly, she moved closer to her hand. She's lying on my arm, her fingers dragging down to my hand. "You're different," muttered her voice softly. "I can tell by the way you gaze at me." I swallowed hard in my throat. "Dry, I don't know what you mean," I lied. Despite knowing the truth, she smiled. With the same knowing smile, she softly spoke. "I first received it in the stable," she said. "You understand what I mean." Her voice was barely audible. Then, without warning, she leaned in, lips brushing against mine so gently, I almost believed I had dreamed it. The sensation was real, and it conveyed a shock. A wave swept across my body, causing my heart to race. The breath caught in my throat, and before I knew it, I was giving her back a kiss with my hands, finding their way to her waist, pulling. Her approaching time appeared to slow down. We stood there, immersed in each other. The world around us fades away from her lips. Her touch was gentle and warm, sending sparks go through me with every. The movement felt like I'd been waiting for a long time. For this time forever, like everything. We had been leading up to this, and we finally, the two of us, breathless and caught, pulled away. After the kiss, none of them. We didn't have to say anything, but we still did. Everything we felt and wanted was in that kiss, in the manner our bodies. They were jammed against one another in the manner described. Our breath mingled in the cold evening. I wasn't sure where this would lead. I was uncertain about its implications for us. I didn't care at the time. All I knew was that I craved more of her, more of these moments, more moments of this connection, shared. As we stood there, our breaths mingled. Something cold in the evening air. The tension had changed between us, been building for so long, finally broke. We both realized there was no going back. She gazed up at me with those eyes, full of warmth and something deeper, something more intimate, her hand gently. I received a quiet invitation and gave it a squeeze. Without hesitation, I grasped her hand in mine. She was led out of the stable and returned. The air inside felt toward the home, different, charged with something. Elevate the calm of the evening, wrapped around us when we moved through the house together, our steps slow, intentional. Every moment felt heightened. Every sight and touch sends sparks. Despite the silence between us, there was no need to state this. It was already stated. We now have a mutual understanding. The link had expanded beyond what either of us could. We gained control once we arrived in the living room. She turned towards me, her fingertips tracing She delicately touched the contour of my jaw. With great intent, I pushed her closer to me, arms circling around her waist. The bodies were pressed together, Felt natural, as if this was always meant to be. She gave a gentle sigh as I leaned forward and brushed my lips against hers. Again, the kiss was slow and delicate. First, deepening as the necessity between. As we grew, we moved together holding hands, exploring each other's bodies and learning. Each curve, line, and inch of skin, there was something so enticing. She responded to my touch. Her body seems to disintegrate into. Mine wasn't only physical. There was also something deeper, something that created. Every moment feels close and linked. We felt like we were sharing more than just information. Passion. She grasped my hand and pulled me towards her, the couch sitting down near me. Her legs curled up beneath her as she leaned forward. She rested her head on my shoulder. I put my arm around her and gently tugged. We sat close together for a long time. The room enveloped us in silence. We kept each other engaged in the conversation. The simplicity of being together was a moment that didn't require words. The type of situation where simply being close was. After some time, she tilted her head. She looked up at me, tracing her fingers. A bright pattern along my arm. This feels right, she said softly. Almost apprehensive, I nodded, brushing a. She brushed a strand of hair away from her face. Do I agree? My voice barely above a whisper? Murmur. There was something really private. She glanced at me with a look of uncertainty, seeing right through me to sections of. I didn't realize we were there. Kissed slower, this time savoring. At the moment, we took our time and were not in a rush. There was no need to rush. We had all the time in the world. Plan it, and we wanted to use everything. Second of all, her lips were gentle. We had a pleasant conversation as we explored each other. I didn't expect this sort of sensitivity. It felt as if each kiss and touch was a promise, a silent declaration of everything we felt but didn't. Eventually, we found our way to her. The soft light filled the chamber. The warmth of the setting sun casts a warm glow. She stood by a bed that was bathed in golden light. The door stood open for a moment, observing me. His eyes were filled with longing. Yet there was also something else. More trust. I walked across the room to her. I took her face in my hands and kissed her. She was sincerely, lovingly letting her know. Every touch intensified my desire for her. How much this meant to me. We moved to. Our bodies came together in the bed. Slow, deliberate dance with each touch. Kiss more intimately than the last one. The world outside disappeared as we lost our way. We are connected to one another, growing deeper with each moment. The time we spent together was exceptional. We were open and real about how we moved. It was as if we were learning from each other. Others in a way that went beyond. Physically, we were discovering components. Afterwards, we lay there with our bodies entangled. Her head rested across my chest as I stroked her hair as the silence fell between us. Was comfortable and full of quiet that comes from truly understanding one. I could feel her respiration slowing down. As she relaxed against me, her body became warm, felt soft in my arms and felt natural. This was a natural place for us to be. Always destined to end up, she gazed up and, after a while, her fingertips. I have never had light circles on my chest before. She felt this way before admitting it gently. Her voice was barely audible. I smiled at her with a gentle touch. Kiss across her forehead. Me neither. I muttered back. I'm glad that it's with you, and we spent the rest of the evening together, caught up in each other's conversations, laughing, kissing, and exploring every inch of. We couldn't get into each other's bodies. It seemed as if the rest of the world went away, leaving just us, both deeply absorbed in our personal spheres. Days of warmth and connection that only followed things between us. Become more heated, we began spending more time together, making excuses to. We became close by touching and kissing each other. Inseparable, finding comfort in each other's arms, discovering delight in the simplest. Whether it was cooking together, I am sitting on the couch watching a movie, I am simply walking around the house, completing the task. We acted like a couple in every situation. In the sense of the word, it felt natural. It appears as though this has always been the case. We intended to reveal everything. Laughter, secrets, and quiet moments. It seemed more intimate than words could. Every day brought something new. We have a deeper connection and a stronger bond. We didn't discuss who we were. We did not need to place a label on it. We both understood what this meant. The longer we spent together, the more I realized how much I wanted this. No matter how much I desired her, she wasn't just mine. She was no longer my stepmother, but rather the woman I knew. I cared about the woman I wanted to be, with the lady who had somehow transformed. The most significant person in my. There was no denying our position. We are a couple in every sense of the word, and I wouldn't have it any other way since our connection stretched days into weeks, became more acute, and the lines between what we were and used to be, blurring entirely. We moved in sync, comprehend each other without needing, finding consolation in the stolen glances at the little touches. But there is always this lingering thirst between us. The need had only intensified over time. We couldn't get enough of each other. Every time we were away, it felt like one evening in our lifetime we discovered we're alone in the house again. The tension between us is intense. In anticipation, she stood in front of me. Her gaze met mine without a word. She took my hand and led me. The door to her room clicked as she went upstairs. Closed behind us, the strain in the atmosphere intensified, and I could feel it. Her respiration quickened as she stepped closer. Her fingers delicately traced her touch sent sparks along the line of my jaw. She leaned in with her entire body. Slowly, her lips barely touched. My teasing draws me in with each one. My hands made their way to her. The waist pulled her closer until there was. Our bodies squeezed together, leaving no space between us. Together we shared a kiss. We hadn't allowed ourselves the sense of urgency. Each kiss felt more intimate before it was made. Intense and meaningful, as if we poured everything we had into this moment, letting it build to something unstoppable. She whispered my name. The voice was full of yearning, and in that instant, it seemed as though the world outside had come to a halt. There was only she and us tangled together in a frenzy of passion. The yearning had been growing for such a long time. For an extended period, her hands meticulously traced my body. Every inch of my skin is mine. Examined hers, memorizing each curve. Each delicate line was. Despite the overpowering intensity of it all, I couldn't stop, and I didn't want to stop. We moved together with our connection, deepened into something greater than just physically. It felt like our souls became intertwined in such a way that it was impossible to determine where one of them was. We ended, and the other. As our relationship became more intense, it became nearly unbearable to bear. As we reached the peak of our ambition, felt like everything else. The world faded away, leaving only the two of us. In that moment, we became engrossed in each other. We'll linger long after the night has ended.